Hi everybody, welcome back to Catherine Sews. Thanks so much for joining me again today. You know, everywhere I go these days I see everybody wearing masks, which is fantastic because if I wear a mask, I protect you. If you wear a mask, you protect me. So thank you for that. But what I am also seeing, which really bothers me so much, is so many people wearing those disposable masks. If you work in a hospital, hey, that's a different story, I understand. But for the everyday person on the street, this is awesome. Those disposable masks are every bit as bad as disposable water bottles that are floating around in our oceans. We don't need more disposable materials ending up in our oceans. Just like a reusable water bottle, you have to wash it. No big deal, right? We can manage that. Same with your mask. It's super easy, I promise. You come home, you're gonna wash your hands anyway, right? As soon as you get home, wash your hands in the same sink with the same soap. You just wash your mask. It takes 30 seconds. Hand soap kills the virus, so that's all good. You'll just wash it, hang it up to dry. It's good for you for the next day. So today's video is all about making a mask. This is my 4th video on masks. I'm not doing another one, but today I just feel like it's important to do this. This one is entirely sewn by hand. Even if you've never sewn a thing in your life, you can do this. The materials you need can be found around your house or the dollar store. Really easy, and I'm excited to take you through it because I'm excited to teach you how to sew. We're going to use pantyhose for the elastic, scrap fabric, needle and thread. That is seriously all you need. You do have the option of putting in a twist tie into the top of this one, which I haven't done in past videos, but I really like it. It helps my glasses not to get so fogged up. So that's pretty great, right? It fits perfectly, I can breathe fine. It's great. So let me show you how to make one. You can do this, I promise. For this hand-sewn mask, here's what you'll need. You're gonna need a rectangle of tightly woven cotton that is at least 11 inches wide and 10 inches tall. And I'm gonna show you how to snip and tear that down to size. You'll need 1 pair of nylon pantyhose. You'll need twist ties. This is optional, but it is nice to have a twist tie to be able to shape the nose. You'll need scissors, a needle and matching thread, and a ruler, any kind of ruler, and a marking pen. Any kind of pen will do. So let's start by snipping and tearing the fabric down to size. This is just a scrap fabric that I have, but it is that tightly woven quilting cotton. So on this piece, I've got a bunch of raggedy cut edges, and then I've got the selvage. The selvage is straight, and we can measure from there. I'm going to be snipping and tearing this piece. I want it to end up being 10 by 11 inches. So I'm going to snip in right there and tear straight across. I always prefer, when I'm doing something rectangular or long and skinny, I like to just snip and tear. You can never cut as straight as that or as quickly as that. If I can only measure accurately from a selvage or from a torn edge. So what I've done there is I've just given myself a good corner to work with. And now I want to go 11 inches this way and snip in there and tear across. This pattern, I'd kind of like to have it centered. So I'm going to be measuring 5 inches on either side of a central point. So this might be my central point. If I can go 5 inches on either side of that, that would be good. If your fabric, if it doesn't matter how the pattern lays or if it's solid color, don't worry, you can just measure your 10 inches. But I think it will look funny on this one if this pattern is off center. So I'm going to snip in here 5 inches from this center line, and here 5 inches on the other side of that center line. Good. And then tear across. Good. So there's my piece that is now 10 inches wide, 11 inches tall, or 25 centimeters and 28 centimeters. Now, if you find that your rectangle is not really rectangular, if it kind of seems like it's been stretched from corner to corner, that just means your fabric is woven off grain a little bit. You can just take the 2 opposite corners and give it a little bit of a stretch like that, and you bring it back to on grain. The next thing we need to cut is the elastic from the pantyhose. first I'm just going to cut off the toes. Good. And then I want to cut a 3-inch strip across there. And you might think that seems kind of wide for elastic, but watch what happens when you just take those and stretch it. You get a nice little ring that's really nice and soft behind your ears. If we cut it narrower than 3 inches, it ends up being too soft and loose and doesn't stretch back enough, but the 3-inch wide pieces end up just perfect. So there you go, there's your elastic. So let's get started here. We're going to fold this in half, and we are going parallel to the 10-inch side. So this is my 10-inch side. I want to fold it parallel to that, not parallel to the 11-inch side. Put those two edges together. With that together, we are now ready to sew. I'm going to take my matching thread and take about an arm's length, about like that, and double it. So this is 2 arm's lengths. Put your thread right through the eye of the needle, and then bring that down, and you're going to tie a knot. So with those 2 ends together, you can wrap it around your finger, and you can just tuck those ends in twice. So put the end in not just once, because that makes a knot that's too small. So put it in, wrap it around twice. You can even do 3 or 4 times if you want. Bring that knot down, and then cut off the thread that comes after your knot. Good. Make sure it's nice and even on your needle. We're going to be doing a running stitch across these 2 edges. Let me show you how to do that. I'm working about a 1/4 inch or less than a centimeter away from the edge. And I'm putting my needle in and out, and in and out, like that, 2 stitches. And then I'm going to pull my thread. My stitches don't have to be super teeny tiny here, but they should be small enough and even enough. And just in and out like that. Pull your thread, and then flatten it out again. Don't let it stay scrunched up. If you want, you could put a couple of pins to make sure your edges of your fabric stay together. And your pins are just like the way the needle goes too. It has to go in and back out to be able to hold it. Here we go. So if you're not comfortable sewing this running stitch across and feeling like you can go straight, you could easily just draw yourself a line right on this fabric. But it's not too difficult to just eyeball it and keep that 1/4 inch distance from the edge. Make sure your thread stays even on the needle. So right to the end, make sure that is nice and flat, it hasn't gotten puckered up at all. And then how to tie a knot at the end. You're going to sew one last little tiny stitch at the end, and see that loop forming? You stick your needle back through that loop. Pull that tight, do that one more time, and this is how we tie a knot for all hand sewing, just like that. Do that twice. You can even take one more stitch just before you cut the thread. And there's our main seam sewn. If you want to do the twist tie, so just start with another 2 arms length of thread and thread your needle again, and then tie your knot in the same way once and twice, and try to push that knot all the way down toward the end, and then cut off the tail of thread that comes after. So I think it works nicely to have 2 twist ties, and we're going to find the center of the seam we just sewed. So I'm going to put a pin right at the center there, just to mark that. And then the twist tie, I don't really want to fold it exactly, but I want to just fold it enough to find the center. Notice I'm laying it in the seam allowance, not inside the mask here, but just in that seam allowance. And I'm going to sew it to that seam allowance. I don't want to just do a running stitch down the middle, because that'll split apart the twist tie. So I'm going to kind of do a zigzag almost through here. So I'm going to come over
back into the middle and out the bottom. I don't want my needle to go past that line of stitching, our first seam, because it'll show. Kind of doing this zigzag, or you could call it like a herringbone stitch over the twist tie, as long as you're not crossing your first line of sewing. So if I can make this more clear, I'm coming over the top, in between the twist tie, down to the bottom, but not past my sewing line, and then back to the middle and out the top. Over the top, through the middle, and out the bottom. Back through the middle and out the top. Over the top, through the middle, out the bottom. So can you kind of see that, like a herringbone effect? Just to kind of keep the twist ties together without separating apart. And then your knot just the same way we did before. Pull your thread till that loop forms. Go back through the loop one more time. Back through the loop. Good. Okay, so there we go. Our twist tie is in place now. So what we're going to do is flip it right side out, and then I'm going to take it to the iron and press there. I want to bring that seam right to the edge there. You can kind of press it by hand first, and then with an iron. Now, if you don't have an iron, you can just press it flat with your hands, and that'll be good enough. Well, that's looking good. So now we want to fold in pleats on the side. Where the twist tie is now the top of the mask. That's where your nose goes. Now, the outside of the mask, for my fabric, it doesn't matter which is the outside, but if it matters for yours, on the outside, the pleats should face down like that, if this is the top of the mask, right? So our mask right now is 5 inches wide. We're going to be taking out 2 inches for pleats. 1 inch, 1 inch, 1 inch, 1 inch. So at that first 1 inch, I'm going to bring that down to the next. The next one goes down to the next. Okay, so this one is going to come down to here. This one is going to go to there. Good. And now we're just going to baste across those pleats. Basting means a temporary stitch or a stitch that's not going to end up showing later. It doesn't have to be beautiful, it just has to hold these pleats in place. Okay, and just a little knot there. Okay, with the pleats basted down now, I can take out those pins and flip it to the wrong side. So on the inside now, I can turn under that little edge, and then I'm going to baste that in place. So running stitch straight across. And where it gets thick, you might need a little bit of help pushing it through that thick fabric, either using a thimble or pushing against the table. So with that folded down and basted in place, now we're ready for the nylon loop to go over, and we'll fold that a second time so the raw edge is nicely tucked in. The nylon loop is pulled right against the fold, so we're not going to catch it in the sewing. And now I'm going to be able to do a little overcast stitch here. So now to do that, I'm going to bring my knot right out that fold. I'm going to hide the knot inside there so this is nice and neat. And I'm just going to make little stitches in the mask. Now this might show on the other side, so this is probably the one stitch that you do want to do as neat as you can. So into the mask and then catching that edge. You'll notice my needle always just goes in and out. I never come out the back. Just picking up the mask and then the folded edge. Keep the needle centered on the thread. Let it get looped around. And it doesn't have to go all the way through, right? I'm just catching the edge of that pleat, and that's fine. Good, there's one side done. We'll just tie our last little knot the same way we've been doing. And then this time, just before I cut the thread, I'm going to put my needle in and come back out anywhere. And then when I cut my thread, I don't have a tail of thread sticking out there. The tail is hidden inside. There's your one side done. You're going to do the exact same thing to the other side. I'm going to put on a fresh thread. I've got, about 8 inches of thread here. It's not going to be enough, and don't make yourself struggle with a short thread. Just much easier to start with a good length of thread. On the second side, the nylon band goes over, fold it down, and same thing, little overcast stitch right along there. See how this little corner wants to stick out there? I'm just going to compact that in a bit. It'll just look a little bit neater if it doesn't have that corner sticking out. And that was easy, wasn't it? Even if you've never sewn before.
Okay, my friends, so that's it for today's video. If I've introduced you to sewing, if you've never sewn before and you made one of these, if you leave a comment in the comment section, I'll be over the moon excited. That'll make my day. And if I've talked you out of using either disposable masks or disposable water bottles, that'll make my day too. So leave me a comment on that as well. Okay, everybody, stay safe, stay calm, and stay healthy. Okay, take care.